Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce my guests today. Yes, guests, plural. Doug Lennick and Chuck Wachendorfer, who are the co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It. Doug is the founding CEO of Think to Perform, a high-performance leadership development firm serving small and large organizations in a variety of industries. He has been in leadership roles for nearly 40 years and is widely recognized as an expert in the science of human behavior. Chuck is president of distribution at Think to Perform. He is a renowned leadership development professional and has worked with clients including American Express, Wells Fargo, Commercia Bank, TD Wealth of Canada, Charles Schwab, and others. His insights on leadership have been featured extensively in media such as CNN, Money, Forbes, Fortune, and the Denver Post. It is my delight to welcome both of you, Doug and Chuck. So, as both of you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning, and we love to learn about your formative years and how those may or may not have informed where each of you are today. So we flipped a coin and Chuck won. So Chuck Wachendorfer, tell us a little bit about your formative years, your early years, and take us through some of those early years and how they led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I was thinking about the question as you were pushing the start button. You know, I'd say my parents raised us, my brother and sisters, to be personally responsible and think for ourselves, not be afraid to try new things. And so that's kind of served me throughout my life. I graduated with an engineering degree and realized very quickly engineering was not for me. And looking at your book behind you there, Tammy, even back then, I was applying some of the things we talk about in our book, Don't Wait for Somebody Else to Fix It, which was like, what do I want? What's important to me?
Yeah.
What do I want my life to look like? And I realized engineering wasn't going to take me in the direction that I wanted my life to go. And I won't bore everybody with the reasons, but then I became a financial advisor. Not afraid to try new things. I was good at math, so I thought, well, being, a financial advisor, if I'm great at math, that would be awesome. So I joined what is now Ameriprise. Back then it was IDS, then became American Express Financial Advisors, but is now Ameriprise. And I became a financial advisor. And I almost failed at that. In fact, there's a story in the book where at one point in my career, very early on, probably at the end of my first year, I had no money, no food, no credit.
Wow.
And I thought about quitting my job, and then I thought I'd have no money, no food, no credit, and no job. So that's probably not a good thing. And I had to look in the mirror and say, well, maybe some of the reason I'm not doing very well has to do with me, which gets to the leadership logic chain, which is, if I want to be more effective with other people, I got to do a better job of managing myself. I got to make better choices then. And making better choices involves increasing our level of self-awareness. So I was probably 24, 25 years old, realizing through this moment of self-awareness that maybe the reason I wasn't doing well was because of me.
I'm curious. So you graduated with a degree in engineering and decided very quickly, done with that, went into probably one of these like sales development programs with it was before it became Ameriprise. And went through that and realized that wasn't going so well either, at least initially. And you kind of looked inside or looked in the mirror age 24, 25.
Yeah. And it wasn't that the opportunity wasn't what I thought it was. It was not,
Yeah.
it was my behavior and my decision making that were not contributing what I thought to my success. So I had to own that. I had to take responsibility for that. I had to look in the mirror and really be honest with myself. And that was really where my turnaround at that point in my career began, was I started changing my behavior, making different decisions. And that's when my results changed. You know, our lives
what did you
today,
start doing differently? What kinds of things did you sort of wake up to?
A couple things. That's a great question. A couple things I woke up to. One was I had to separate the critical from the important.
Ooh.
Like if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. We've all heard that before. And so what I had to make sure I was doing was maximizing my time on the things that were critically important. We call those in our book key activities. So there's certain key activities I had to do that would drive my success, and I had to maximize my time there. The second thing I had to do was stop trying to reinvent the wheel. That there were people in my office making the kind of money that I wanted to make.
Yeah.
And I just needed to copy what they were doing. And so when I really did those two things, that's when I started to see the results that I had hoped for.
And the results were about making the kind of money you were making. There was more to it, right?
Ultimately, it involved me generating a certain level of income, but it began with me in clients.
Yeah.
And me helping them.
Right.
And then by me doing a better job of helping them, I generated income for myself.
Right.
Right. But I had to do a better job. But the other thing I realized was being successful as a financial advisor wasn't as much about math as it was about connecting with people.
Right.
And what they really wanted for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and really helping them get in touch with that. And I learned a lot as a financial advisor. I mean, it's one thing to learn about markets and investments, but the real value in that career choice was seeing what people had done with their money.
Yeah.
The mistakes, the successes. You know, I was 24, 25, 26 years old.
Wow.
And, you know, I'd sit with 10 or 15 people a week, most of them older than me.
Yeah.
Who either had nothing or had a lot. And so I got to see it wasn't necessarily how much you made, it's how you managed your spending and how much you saved and invested. And that was incredibly valuable to me.
Well, I was thinking, what an interesting parallel. There you are, you know, in your mid-20s, a time in most of our lives where many of us are kind of wondering, you know, are we moving in the right direction? Who am I? What am I? And there you are, really almost holding, you know, in some ways, talking to all these clients who are trying to figure out what they want for themselves. And the money's kind of the metaphor, right? And it's almost like you have this big life lesson just parading in front of you with all these clients. You know, it was like you, in a way, you probably were looking at some of these folks and saying that they're looking at their lives. That could be me 10, 20 years down the road.
You're exactly right.
And it gave you just so much to think about, I could imagine.
It was incredibly instructive to me at that point in my life. And it served me really well, but better than I ever even imagined. I found myself at 40, fast forwarding 15 or so years. And, you know, Doug and I met along the way. Doug and I met in 1985, and Doug was tremendously influential in my life. I talk about the Mount Rushmore in my life of people who affected my life, and he's on my Mount Rushmore.
I love it.
So you'll hear from him in just a minute. But, you know, Doug very much was about, you know, thinking about, like, what do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to take your life? And so those are questions that, you know, a lot of people maybe wonder about, but don't really act on. right?
Yes.
They don't take I think about it, but I don't really do anything with it.
Right.
And we talk about this acronym WDY, WFY. What do you want for yourself? Doug brought that to American Express. Doug was in charge of 12,000, 15,000 people. And he very much installed that as a regular conversation in a very large organization that I think not only helped people think about what they wanted for their future, but instill some responsibility to make it happen.
Yes.
Well, this is what you say you want. What are the things you got to start doing today to make that a reality?
Right.
That was new for me as well.
Yeah. But that's interesting that was new for you, yet it sounds like you kind of, gave yourself a little knock upside the head a little bit when you were 24, 25 and started, your job as a financial advisor started to take quite a twist and turn at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I ended up running regions of financial services for what became Ameriprise. But at 40, again, through this self-examination, I realized I didn't want to raise my kids in the city that we were living. I didn't want my boss's job. I was burnt out on what I was doing. And I had plenty of money, thankfully, because I applied what I had learned along the way from my clients. And so I took 2 years off, and we sold our house in the city we were living in. We had a condo in Colorado in Vail. We lived there for a while. And then fortunately enough, Doug was founding Think to Perform. And I'd always learned, as I mentioned, a lot from Doug, and I'm a builder by nature. I enjoy building things. It allowed me to live in Colorado and raise my kids. And so I joined Doug and Think to Perform in 2004. And we've had the good fortune of helping people all over the world apply some of the tools and concepts we talk about in the book.
Don't forget Australia.
Australia.
Well, I just said all over the world.
No, where you work, where you lived. He was telling us 2 years off. They moved to Australia or somewhere, New Zealand.
Oh, we traveled. We went to New Zealand for a few months, Central America, Europe.
I love that.
That was part of the 2 years.
Yes, it was part of the 2-year sabbatical, I'll call it.
Nice. Love that. Wow. I'm glad you jumped in there, Doug. So I do want to hear how the two of you actually met. And maybe we'll let Doug share that part of the story. So Doug,
I don't even know that Doug remembers it, because Doug was the big guy. Like when I started, I was probably 26 by then. Doug's 8 years older than me, so he was 34. But he was legendary at 34, at least in American Express. And so I was in Minneapolis on a conference, an award conference that I qualified for. And myself and a colleague decided to just randomly call Doug's office, who was in St. Paul, and said, can we come over and see you? Now, Doug didn't know us from Adam. He didn't know who we were, why we were calling. And he said, sure, come on over tomorrow. And we took a cab or whatever. We got over to St. Paul, and he spent, I don't know, a couple of hours with us talking about, his success, and was very open with us. And that was really the first time I met Doug, was probably in 1986.
Okay. So you were in your mid-20s,
right,
at that kind of critical turning point.
Yes.
And you and a colleague reached out to Doug wanting to
just pick his brain, learn from somebody who's, where we want to be, where we wanted to go.
I love that. I wonder how many people do something like that. Like, we want to learn from this person. We're just going to call them and say, let's go see them.
Yeah. Can we stop by?
Can we just stop by and take up some of your time?
Ignorance is bliss. We never thought, the worst that could happen is he says no.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love that. What a great example. Oh my goodness. Oh, the first time I met both of you, I think I had goosebumps most of the time, and I'm already getting them again. So bring it on, Doug. So tell us about the formative years of Doug. It's like, I want to know who little Doug was.
It's funny when the part when you were giving the introduction of us, you mentioned 40 years that I'd been in leadership positions for 40 years. And we just didn't want to, I don't know, it shouldn't write books on moral intelligence and then be, the truth is it's like 50 years. So, but it sounded like so old. More than 40 sounded better than 50.
Well, you know.
So I will tell you this, that my formative years, and it's interesting, and I appreciate Chuck bringing up really the youth of it all. My mom and dad moved around a lot. My dad was always trying to better the family situation and moved a lot. He changed jobs at different times. And so I ended up moving a lot. I was born in North Dakota. And we were, at that time, only rich people went to things like kindergarten, and we weren't that. And so I started school in the first grade.
Mm-hmm.
I went through 12 years of school, and I went to 8 schools. And
Wow.
one of the things that taught me a lot, about, Chuck talks about self-awareness. That taught me a lot about myself. I was always worried. Every time I moved, I worried about the same 3 things. Would I be academically competitive? I mean, would I be smart enough to be with these kids in this new school? And I was especially frightened about that when I moved from North Dakota to Minnesota between my freshman and sophomore years in high school. And I'm thinking,
those are tender years.
Well, and I'm reading in my geography book that North Dakota is pretty backwards. And I'm taking Latin class, and I discover I've got Latin in my sophomore year in Redwood Falls. And I just took Latin, and I'm going to be like an idiot in the class. So I always worried, would I be academically competitive? Would I be athletically competitive? And would they like me? And so what I found.
In that order?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But pretty much in that order.
Uh-huh.
Pretty much.
Huh.
Because I will say this about Latin. It turned out that the teacher every day would ask me when I came in the morning, she would ask for my translation and use that as the key. So I did okay in Latin.
I'd say so. I'm sure she was upset when you moved again.
Well, I didn't move anymore.
You didn't?
Senior, I finished out in one school. Until then, I'd moved all those times.
Wow.
And what I got at, ultimately, I got a lot of trauma, but I also got confidence. I realized wherever I was academically competitive. I was athletically competitive. People did like, and I've been a serial entrepreneur. So I played a couple years of college football in a small college. I wasn't very good. And I realized in my future as a teacher and a coach, I decided I wanted to change. And so I decided to go into accounting. My dad always needed to be an accountant. So I moved to Minneapolis, and in Minneapolis started working for Time Life Books. And in that process, discovered I could sell books on the phone. And then I started a company with 2 other guys when I was 20 years old. So I owned the circulation rights with those guys to what is now Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine.
Oddly, oh my goodness.
Yeah. I just, at a celebration of life services, I met the current editor-in-chief of that magazine, and she was quite struck by the story of all of it. Amazing story, really. But anyway, I started that company and started my career as what Chuck started his career as, an IDS representative. And that too was entrepreneurial. One of them, and I was right downtown Minneapolis. So that's how I got going. I was 21 years old when I became an IDS rep. I dropped out 1 quarter short of a degree in accounting. So I never made it. I failed at accounting. So Chuck talked about failing. I didn't fail out of college, but I failed to finish, which isn't a red badge of courage. I did graduate 34 years later. And then my joke on that is I thought I had a 40-year degree and I was finishing a year early.
I love it.
But it was a 4-year degree and I finished 35 years late. But I now be in what I used to do, business management. Well, I still do it, but I'm now qualified to have the job I used to have at American Express, fully qualified academically. So that's it. And what I experienced early on is everything Chuck talked about. If I didn't know myself, I was in trouble. I discovered early on that it was really hard, that emotionally it was very hard to take the ups and the downs. So I learned very early in my career that I operate like everybody else in an emotional comfort zone. And when I get uncomfortable on either end of that zone, my response was to be less active. And I had to break through that mentally, psychologically. And so I realized for me to be successful, it was really a combo platter of dealing with myself and all those things that Chuck talked about. And then ultimately, both of us realized if we can learn to be consciously competent at this,
Right.
we could probably share it with somebody. And so we wrote a book.
Right.
Don't wait for somebody to fix it. It's your life.
So I'm curious, though. I'm sticking with the younger years for a moment, and then we will definitely get to Think to Perform and your book. I know you've written multiple books. But both of you described this kind of some of the decisions you made in your younger years, or this awareness of yourself and how that propelled you into certain decisions. And it's funny. Maybe I have the wrong idea, but I'm wondering how many young men in their mid-20s really sort of stop and check in with themselves emotionally and make pivoting types of decisions like that. I don't know, but I don't know that I know a lot of them. I think that's why I wrote Work from the Inside Out, is because I think there are a lot of, young people. I mean, I'm talking back a generation or two, maybe.
Sure.
The newer generations, I think, do things differently. But where, if everyone said to you, hey, you're really good in math, you should become an accountant, or you should become an engineer, or you should this or that. And a lot of people just went and did what people told them they ought to do because it sounded like a good thing to do. And then it wasn't till they maybe even hit their late 30s, maybe 40s, and said, hey, wait a minute, I don't really like this, even though I'm good at it. And so I find it remarkable that each of you seem to have some kind of an awareness. I'm not saying like that you were articulating it in the same way you are at this point in your life.
Right.
But something, propelled each of you in those early years to really explore some other options, or at least think about where to go. I mean, I know plenty of people who pursued the financial advisor path, as you did, Chuck, who would have faced that, that failure, as you called it, and would have just, looked in another direction. They would not have sort of said to themselves, hey, you know what? You're going about this all wrong. Now get back in there and do what you know you can do here. I mean, at least that would be that's what I've seen a lot of people do.
That's a life skill, Tammy, that we talk about in the book, this know your real self. We talk about an exercise called the freeze, which is, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And, I didn't know it. I didn't know the exercise then, but I think it's a regular exercise that we talk about people playing daily. Right? Because those will be life changes. We get older, our likes and dislikes change. What we enjoy doing changes. And if I'm not paying attention, I can end up doing things I don't like for a long time, as you're saying. And one of our mentors, a guy named Jeff Stiefler, who we also quote in the book, has a saying, everybody wants to be in the groove, but nobody wants to be in a rut. And wisdom is knowing the difference.
Yeah.
But in order to be wise, what I have to do is practice self-awareness to say, am I really enjoying this? Is this taking me in a direction that I want my life to go? And if the answer is no and no, well, then I have to know, who do I want to be ideally? Right? That's essential number one for us is I got to know who I want to be ideally so that I can start to pull myself in that direction.
Yeah.
But if I don't practice self-awareness and I don't know who that ideal person is, I just keep doing the same stuff.
Well, it's like the hamster on the wheel, right?
Right. It is. Well, and the truth is if you just get those two things right, actually, or any part of the book, you can change your life with almost any of the essentials, but name the first two. And if you just start there, you could end there and life would be wonderful. First, he said, aim to be your ideal self. Everybody listening to us right now, think about your right now. Ideally, I'm going to bet you're like a wonderful person. And I believe you. But then what Chuck said is really critical. Know your real self. That's the second essential. Truth is, you're not wonderful all the time. Nobody is.
Right.
But if you aim to be and equip yourself with tools to be, you sure as heck can be more often. What we are basically saying, any one of us, myself, Chuck, yourself, Tammy, any one of us can actually be ideal more often. We fall short once in a while. We work our butts off, but we still snap at people when we shouldn't. We still, say something we regret. We still do, but let's do it less often. And let's not wait for somebody else. I'll start being nice when you are, Tammy. Oh, great. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't wait for someone else to be the first person. The first act of kindness, if you've never seen it before, it's okay if you be the first.
Yeah.
You think, I've never seen anybody be kind. Okay, why don't you be the first? See if anybody follows you. And that's what leadership is about. It's all about, and Chuck articulated it really well.
We have a values exercise. If your listeners want to go to Think to Perform,
yes,
think the number 2 perform.com, think the number 2 perform.com. They can take this values exercise. So how do I aim to be my ideal self? Well, I have to know what ideal for me looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had 100,000 people this year from 146 different countries complete the values exercise. So that tells us there's a lot of people who really want to know who they hope to be ideally.
And everybody all over the world cares about their family. They want their family to be all right, just like Chuck and his 3 kids, just like me, 3 kids. I don't know if you have children, but if you do, my guess is you want them to
absolutely. Yeah. I have a daughter. Absolutely. Yeah. I actually went online and took the values exercise. Don't ask me what my results were because I'd have to look them up. And I do recommend that people take it because I'm in full agreement with you that, I know that the results felt very genuine to me, and it was a little challenging. Because you have to choose some values, then you have to pare it down further and further and further. And yet it's a great exercise because it really does get you to think in a way where you're really having to zero in on really what matters most. And when people are making the kinds of choices that take them to where they really want to be in their lives, they're usually doing it from a values basis.
Right.
And that's what you're pointing them to, for sure.
We have a thing at Think to Perform. Performance in any area of life, Tammy, is a function of 3 things: our talent, our skills, and our decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
And decision-making has twice the impact on performance than talent and skill combined. I'm not saying talent and skill don't matter.
Right.
They just don't matter as much as decision-making.
Right.
And to the point you were making, there's two drivers of decision-making. One, me knowing and using my values.
Yep.
I can't use them if I don't remember them. I can't use them if I don't know them.
Right.
So I got to know them. So whether it's a sticky note on my computer screen, some people take a screenshot on their they save it on their lock screen on their phone, whatever it is that you need to do to remember your values. If I know and use my values, that will improve my decision-making. The second driver of decision-making is emotional competence. So if I manage myself, manage my emotions and use my values, I will become a better decision-maker. And unlike our IQ, which we can't improve, we can become better decision makers. And we make 30 decisions a day.
Right.
And we don't have to make all 35,000 better. But if you made one or two better choices a day, you're talking about 600-700 better decisions a year. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's with your money, your time, your life, who you're hanging out with, what you're reading, all those are choices.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and those choices really, I mean, it is critical. In fact, interesting is you mentioned that a colleague of ours, a woman that we know and we've done work with her family's firm, has a book out called One Decision Away. I mean, literally, any given day, you can turn, like the decision, just think of what you've already called out, Tammy, in Chuck's life, and we could do it in anybody's life, but the decision not to quit, the decision to go do this, and I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
That's a decision. And
absolutely.
He just made that decision one day. That's one decision.
Yeah.
But that's a big one. You know, the decision to leave the work that he had and take a couple of years off.
Mm-hmm.
The decision to come work with Think to Perform to help other people make better decisions. That decision, all of that. Basically been at Think to Perform pretty much our whole career. I mean, the Think to Perform, he only missed a couple of minutes. And he was
a couple of minutes.
And even during those minutes, he became a client. So he actually was a client of ours while he was deciding what to do, because got a position as the president of a financial firm. He didn't tell his whole story, but he's had a storied career. And in that role, he was our client. And in that role, he decided, I think I want to work with you rather than where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and here he is. Thankfully.
So he invited himself in. Is that it?
Well, kind of. And I think
it was mutual. We both enjoyed working together. And, I had great respect for Doug. And hopefully he had that for me. So I don't think he would have hired me if he didn't.
All these years later.
Yep.
Yeah. So the book, we hope we really wrote this book to make a difference. I mean, we're as a company, as individuals, we really, as entrepreneurs, we believe in making money, making a difference. Mm-hmm. But if a difference part, that's really critical. If we don't get to make a difference, it doesn't matter. Making money is empty.
Well, and
really want people to benefit from what we have here.
Yeah. So who would you say, I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but who would you say are the people who most either need or benefit from your book? I know that you go into organizations and work with leaders, but it does seem like you've got, the 8 essentials to enhance your leadership impact at work, home, and anywhere else. So it almost sounds like this book could be for anyone.
Well, that's exactly right, Tammy. We wrote this book. There's 1,500 leadership books published a year. So we did not want to write a business leadership book.
Mhm.
This is a leadership book that anybody can use anywhere to make a positive difference, as Doug is saying, in their own lives or in the lives of those they care about, their
Mhm.
family, their neighborhood, their company, whatever it might be. Because we all have got some issues that need some fixing that we
Mhm.
can't wait for somebody else to take on, especially if we'd like our lives to be different.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was like we were saying earlier, it requires some personal responsibility for me to like step in and go, okay, no, I actually can do something about this. Maybe I can't solve global warming, but I could actually do a better job of managing what I dispose of,
Mhm.
what I
Sure.
put in my body, those
Right.
kinds of things.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about the person listening to this right now. The person. There's many people listening to this. And thinking about the person who says, "Yeah, but I got 3 kids and tuition to pay and a mortgage and retirement to think about, and how can I, just do whatever I want to do?" I hear that kind of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I address that in my book, but I'm curious how you might address those people who feel the sort of the weightiness of all the people they're taking care of.
Trapped almost.
Well, I don't know if they feel trapped. I think they feel it might be that they feel trapped. Some of them do. I think they've ended up in jobs or professions where they feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're burdened by all the trappings of a life they've created.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some who just also don't know what else they would want to do and aren't sure how to kind of move through it, or feel like, they have all these people they've made promises to, the family they're taking care of, and all the commitments that they've made in their lives, and they just can't see how they're going to be able to meet those commitments and still do something that really feeds their own soul at the same time.
I think what we're talking about, Tammy, is a journey or a glide path, not a light switch. I mean, I think this is about like, how can I start to move in that direction?
Yeah.
A lot of the big decisions in our lives, happen over time. My decision to leave American Express at 40 or 41 probably took me 5 years to make. But I started investigating, I started reading, I started looking at other things, and then it kind of all comes together at some point for you. But and by the way, this is everybody's situation is different. So
Absolutely.
there's no like one size fits all, but
Right.
these 8 essentials will help you become more effective in your own life.
Yeah.
Doug, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was simply going to say that one of the things that when we get into the concept of don't wait for someone else to fix it,
Yeah.
a lot of times people, and the word trapped is a good one that Chuck mentioned, they feel like I have to have the perfect, or I have to have a better job or a better house or a better car. I need something different. And the opportunity really, and I was years ago, I was asked to give a presentation on lessons I was learning in life. And one of the lessons that I am learning, and learning is a verb. I hesitate to use the word learned because we point out that knowing is the enemy of learning.
Mm-hmm.
But I continually am learning. Is my challenge is less about finding the perfect path and more about perfecting the path I'm on. And so whatever circumstance I happen to be in, now I'm going to name a name that was in the most miserable of circumstances, and he perfected the path. His name's Viktor Frankl.
Oh, great example.
he wasn't in the perfect path, and he couldn't even select the one he wanted to be on. He was strapped down, punished, tortured, but he made a decision. But that was purpose driven. And so, when one of the earlier books that I was involved in that we use often, and we've been involved with this work in financial services, we discovered when we wrote Financial Intelligence that in the domestic United States, 30% of the population that lives below the poverty line considers themselves thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, happiness is a state of mind, not a state of affairs.
That's right.
It's a state of mind, though, that's hooked into us doing something in our life meaningful. Whatever our life circumstance is, we can make a meaningful contribution. And for those who figure it out, whether they're in poverty or not, I don't know if I was in poverty, if I could figure it out. Yeah. I'm not in poverty.
Right.
I'm blessed. But God bless those people who in poverty have figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. Anybody can figure it out. No one has to wait for anybody else. And thank you, by the way, for disagreeing with all the publishers. Whenever we get ready to write a book, they say, well, tell us narrowly who your audience is. I loved it when you said, sounds to me like anyone could benefit from this. That's what Chuck and I said. And they said, well, you can't say that.
Well, yeah, it's hard because the marketing folks want to know how to market to the niches or the niche or whatever.
When we were thinking about this book, we were thinking about books like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Sure.
We were thinking about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
Because those are timeless books that no matter, it's not a this year, today kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And we wanted this book to be hopefully in that same category.
Yeah. Well, I think it could be easily. And, you also made me think about there's a book out there called Scarcity, which is written by a psychiatrist and a behavioral economist. And they looked at people living in poverty around the world and looked at how happy they are in their circumstances. And it was they looked at a lot of different things, but all about looking at the mindsets of scarcity or not. Very interesting book. I'm going to put that in the show notes too.
Your happiness quotient goes up when your quality of your relationships goes up. And what Chuck mentioned, the global results that we've seen just in 2023, I mean, the people value people. That's in our data, because it's top 5, it's family. Number 1, relationships is currently ranked number 4, and friendships number 5.
Yeah.
And health and happiness are 2 and 3. So think about what people really. They want their family to be okay. They want people to be healthy and happy. They want to have good friends. That's what people care about.
That's right. That's right.
We're like human beings.
How about that?
Imagine
that. So if people want to get in touch or learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
You go to our website, thinktoperform.com. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
They can also reach out to us directly. Our email address is the first initial of our first name. So it's D Lennick, Lennick, at thinktoperform.com.
Right.
Mine's a little longer, but if you go to our website, you can find it. It's C. Walkendorfer.
Yeah, we'll put that all in the show notes.
Perfect.
You don't have to spell that out. Thank you.
Very often, but I'll do this, and then it'll identify yourselves as from Tammy's show. If you want, just text me. This is my cell phone number, 612-747-0004. And then we can give Tammy a big thank you and a hug.
Wow. That's the first time I've ever had a guest give out their phone number on the show. That's big. I hope you don't regret that.
Yeah, thought I'd better give mine than Chuck's, but I thought, he wouldn't appreciate that. And I said, let me give you Chuck's number. But I have.
Of course, Doug didn't tell you that he's changing his plan tomorrow, but that's okay.
No.
So one last question before we wrap up, and I really think you've kind of answered some of this, but I know you have so much more wisdom to share. I want to milk this. So, a lot of people listening to this are really seriously thinking about what is next for them, what their next moves are. What would be a key piece of advice you might offer someone who is in that process of taking that next step or thinking about what's next?
Yeah, I mean, you've already said it. First thing I would do is I would really go get in touch with who's inside of yourself. You talk about Inside Out, Tammy, which I think is both a book and kind of title, and I'm looking forward to reading your book. Look inside yourself. What do you actually care about? And then don't just look for places where what you care about can be found. Look for opportunities within your current life where you demonstrate what you care about. Like I don't have to go anywhere to demonstrate my love for my family. I can do that right here. I don't need a different job. So my values, and put verbs in front of them. So discover your values, put verbs there. For Doug Lennick, love your family, be happy, seek wisdom, behave with integrity, do something of service for somebody else today, and make healthy choices, which, by the way, is 6. It's our game, and so I can have 6. But the idea is actionize your values.
Yes.
Is go online and check out what your values are, and then figure out how to live those every day in your current life.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm doing a 180 or a 360. It's like, how about starting with where you are right now?
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might want to do a 180 once you pay attention to yourself. You might and say, I'm changing.
Once you know your values, Tammy, what happens is you start to notice when you're aligned with them and when you're not. And you start to ask yourself questions like, is this really important to me?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just saying it's important? Or is something else more important than what I'm? But all of that's great because what it's doing is improving my self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you start to slowly over time make changes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and as you said earlier, even the decision to take your sabbatical, right? You spent a good 5 years considering a whole variety of factors before you actually made that move. And I think that's the thing when people are either unhappy or feeling stuck, or frozen in some ways, they think they're going from point A to point Z. And they forget about there's B, C, D, E, there's all those points in between, and they need to give themselves some time. And I think part of that is also looking at where you are right now and what's true for you right now, both maybe in terms of feeling stuck, but also in terms of what's important to you right now.
And where do I want my life to end up?
Right.
I learned an exercise many years ago. I wish I could give the person attribution, but I don't remember his name. There's a difference between our possible future and our probable future. Our probable future is when I look at my life from today forward. I'll probably be living in Denver. I'll probably be with Think to Perform. I probably, all these probably. It's like the trajectory of our life in the past. When you look at your possible future, you look at your life in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
So how old do you think you'll live to be, Tammy?
Well, my father's 93 right now, so I guess I think I've got a good amount of his genes. So I'll say into my 90s.
Okay, so let's say 95. And I don't know how old you are now, and you don't need to share that, but you say, okay, so you look back imagine yourself at 95, laying on your deathbed, looking back over your life from 95 all the way to the age you are today. That's a long time. And you think, okay, so what do I want to look back on my life and really it's going to stand out for me? What do I want to be proud of?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And all of a sudden you start to reimagine your life, thinking about it in reverse, because that's where you want to end up.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so your decisions today, once you know where you want to end up, you can start to say, are the decisions I'm making today taking me closer to that or further away from that?
Yeah, I love that.
Thanks for having us, Tammy.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you for being here. This has been delightful. I love that. I love the way we wrap that up. So Doug and Chuck, I can't thank you enough. And I want to encourage people to get their hands on your book and follow your work. Thank you so much for being on Work from the Inside Out.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Doug Lennick and Chuck Wachendorfer. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 243. While there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. And if you're feeling it, please help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button right there. Leave an honest rating and review. I have provided step-by-step instructions to make it easy for you. The more ratings and reviews we have on Apple Podcasts, the more exposure the podcast gets, the more people I can help. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or you can order it through your local public library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.